this is a war that time and again throughout the polling that we've seen is proving to be very unpopular with the American public. And I think that, there's a majority of the American public that doesn't actually think that this war is worth fighting.
Let's talk about a peace proposal. And I know that we're on sort of Groundhog Day a little bit here, but various members of Donald Trump's administration, Scott Bessent, Treasury Secretary, and Marco Rubio, are talking about the prospect of a deal, a way to resolve the US conflict, being in a very progressive stage. That's what Qatar's foreign ministry have said. We've heard that a deal is imminent. Qatar's foreign ministry saying there's a draft peace agreement being circulated. The administration in Washington signalling increasing optimism then. Here is the Secretary of State, Marco Rubio, saying there has been progress, but not finality on the situation in the Strait of Hormuz and on a full agreement.
There are ships moving through the straits. There's oil moving right now through the straits, so the straits are open. Nonetheless, I think that there's a conversation and a negotiation that we are involved in between Oman and Iran on how more ships can be able to go through there safely in the short term as we move towards these longer term talks about denuclearization. And suffice it to say, there's been progress made in those talks, but not finality yet. We're hoping that will happen very shortly.
Do we have any more detail on that, particularly on what appears to be some sort of, temporary fix on getting vessels moving in the Strait of Hormuz?
Well, right now we're still sort of figuring out what some of the details of this draft agreement are. I mean, like you said, it is a bit of Groundhog Day because we've heard many times that they are so close to a deal. Iran is also holding talks with Oman to kind of establish some kind of temporary arrangements, potentially for up to 3 months, where Tehran can maintain control of one of the routes through the Strait of Hormuz. And then, of course, a big part of the deal would be how do you open up the waterway. Otherwise, I mean, that's been obviously one of the biggest objectives for the Trump administration. So, it's also, having said that, coming at a time when there was a cargo vessel that reportedly lost power after being struck by an unknown projectile, and differing accounts from both sides about the kind of damage that's been done and who's responsible. So I do think that there's still a lot of uncertainty. And there's still a lot of escalatory rhetoric that's coming from President Trump himself. But we will see if this is perhaps finally yet another breakthrough amid weeks of stalled talks.
Yeah, the ship you mentioned, it's an Indian-flagged vessel. It capsized and sunk near Yemeni waters after being hit by a projectile. The Iran-aligned Houthis in Yemen recently announced a blockade on Saudi-linked shipping passing through the Bab el-Mandeb Strait that leads to the Red Sea. So there, although we don't know the full circumstances of this, there is obviously people asking if there is a connection to be made here. We heard from General Jack Keane earlier, who has been known to offer advice to Donald Trump on military issues. He lambasted America's Gulf allies for preventing Trump from going full scorched earth against Iran. Is that a popular view in Washington, Sabrina?
No, I wouldn't say so. I mean, look, this is a war that time and again throughout the polling that we've seen is proving to be very unpopular with the American public. And I think that there's a majority of the American public that doesn't actually think that this war is worth fighting. And it just signals the frustration domestically that the Trump administration has to contend with. So, to go full scorched earth, I think, and potentially have to involve the U.S. in an even larger conflict, I don't think would make this any more popular. In fact, I think it would do even more damage. I mean, when I talk to Republican pollsters and strategists about how this is all playing out ahead of the midterms, we've already talked a lot about the impact on gas prices, but they also said that a big part of how bad this could be for Republicans in November is how long it goes on. And if this is still front and center, or the Iran war is still front and center going into the polls in November, it's only going to energize the opposition to the Democratic opposition, and also lead to more disillusionment among the president's own supporters. So I don't think the idea that Trump should go even further is advice that would do him any favors when it comes to the political fallout from this war.
Yeah, and I'm sure he's well aware of that. Okay, well, we'll see if the words of Scott Bessent and Marco Rubio hold true, and if they don't, it'll be Iran's fault, of course. Iran, for its part, by the way, says there are no talks with the US, only with Oman. They're talking about the Strait of Hormuz, because obviously some of that strait is in Omani territory, or classified as Omani territory. Let's talk about oil, because Donald Trump's railed against oil companies today. He's accused them of making too much money from his war with Iran.
You're going to see oil, when we're finished with Iran, you're going to see the prices drop through the floor. But they made too much money. Too much money. Chevron, too much money. ExxonMobil, too much money. When you look at one company where they made 12 times what they made the year before, they're going to give some of that back to the public. And they better cut the retail price, the consumer price. Too much money. You're surprised I'm saying it? I'll say it loud and clear. I'm not happy about it.
Yeah, I mean, certainly Saudi's main oil company today announced, I think profits or profits up by 44%. I've got the figure in front of me somewhere. But that will upset Donald Trump. I mean, they say that it's all about them being able to quickly pivot and be agile amongst the current crisis in the Strait of Hormuz and beyond. But they're not the only company. And this is Donald Trump's point, I suppose. Does he want a piece of it, Sabrina?
Well, look, I think that it's not surprising that the president is trying to redirect blame when it comes to the gas prices here at home toward oil companies, because that has been actually a big source of the fallout for Republicans, especially, as we said, ahead of the midterm elections. Cost of living and inflation were already the top issues for voters, and this pain that people are feeling at the gas pump has been a huge factor in Trump's approval ratings continuing to fall, and increasing the odds of Democrats regaining control of at least one, if not both, chambers of Congress. So, obviously Trump is saying that they should give some of that money back to the public, some of those profits that the companies have made by taking advantage of the disruption to the energy market since the beginning of the war. But obviously a lot of analysts will tell you that that was always going to be one of the big risks that the administration was taking in terms of the disruption that we were just talking about, and what the impact would be on gas prices here in the U.S. So politically speaking, he can talk about the companies as much as he wants. I don't think that oil and gas companies are particularly popular with the American public. But when it comes to actually casting their ballots, when it comes to actually doing something with their votes, the people that they'll be voting for are either Republicans or Democrats. And in a midterm election where it's a referendum on the president, I think no matter what he says in terms of who's to bear the blame, people will ultimately blame his policy and decision to take the U.S. into this war rather than what the companies have done in response.
I mean, could you see, Sabrina, Trump introducing a windfall tax, or would that be unthinkable for a kind of a free market guy and a Republican president?
It's not, I don't know. It's kind of unclear what they might do because it's Trump, right? He might do something unusual. Right now, for now, at least what the administration has says is they don't plan to introduce any kind of export ban on oil or petroleum products. If the gas prices continue to rise, then they could shift course. I think it just depends on how bad things are looking in the coming months as voters head to the polls, and if the administration feels like there is something that they need to do to just try and shift the realities of the market and perhaps bring down prices in some other way. But I think the damage most likely has already been done.
Yeah, so two US oil companies, Chevron. Trump says Chevron, too much money. ExxonMobil, too much money. They're going to give some of that back to the public. He seems very sure about that, and they better cut the retail price, the consumer price, to clarify. Okay, let's talk about Truth API. Donald Trump has launched it. It's a paid service that gives Wall Street firms and investors the fastest access to potentially market-moving Truth Social posts before anyone else. Trump Media and Technology Group hasn't directly said that the service will include Donald Trump's account, but with 13 million followers, this would certainly be the most influential. What can you tell us, Sabrina, about this?
Well, I do think that it's been something that has raised a lot of concerns, ethics concerns, concerns about insider trading. What the president is effectively doing is monetizing the presidency, according to experts that we've spoken to. And so, just to kind of break it down, as you pointed out, it's what they're selling is $100,000 monthly subscription.
$100,000 a month.
Well, for my, I want to double check that. But no, that's what. So what they basically the premium data product for Trump the subscription service for earlier access to Truth Social posts is reportedly for $100,000 a month, because it would be accessed by Wall Street firms for whom that money is nothing, right? And so they would be able to access these Truth Social posts seconds before the general public does. And so when you talk to, as I was saying, some people, analysts from outside, they say it's effectively insider trading by definition.
Yeah, I mean, it's and because it's a business model, it is in the interests of the business to sell their product and to therefore potentially manipulate the information that it's giving out, in that Donald Trump has access to information before anyone else does. There was accusations on that Monday after the Feb 28 US attack on Iran. There was lots of suspicious trading reported. It caused a huge amount of concern, or maybe it was before the attack. But anyway, at a crucial point around the time that the US bombed Iran, started the war effectively, there was lots of questionable trading, and there were lots of people saying, how would these people make those market moves unless they knew that Donald Trump was about to push the button on Iran, or unless someone made them aware of it. And this brings into play all of those concerns, doesn't it?
It does. And, it's interesting because there are actually some Wall Street executives who are actually saying, albeit privately, that this appears to be in some ways so blatant, and they don't want to get anywhere near it, because in any other administration, it could be seen as illegal. And so, I think that there are, of course, some people or some firms who have already started signing up. But there are other major players in finance who are worried about, of course, getting into Trump's crosshairs and don't want to speak publicly about it. But there are others who are calculating that the risks that are the legal concerns surrounding the service are too considerable to sign up for it. So we'll see how it unfolds. I wouldn't be surprised if there isn't. Democratic senators are already demanding an SEC investigation, and I wouldn't be surprised if it will encounter other legal hurdles in the courts as well.